Good evening. Welcome to Legends of Myths and Monsters. I'm your host, Ellie. Boy, tonight I'm kind of going to go backwards from Zeus. Who was Zeus? Everybody knows who Zeus was, the Olympians and the Titans and the battle that ensued. But when you start looking into Zeus and the history, uh, you start asking a lot of questions. Zeus was very well known as a sky god. Zeus was the almighty ruler, the Mount Olympus and the pantheon of the gods, who resided in the heavens. He was the god upholding law and justice, morals, and the old Greece according to the Greek mythology. Now, Zeus was the lord of the heavens. Yeah, not that Z guy. Oh boy, wait till you hear what I got, William. So William's in our chat room. So he was the Lord of the heavens meaning from space to the skies. He was the rain god, the cloud gatherer, the greatest deity of the ancient Greeks. Zeus is the supreme god of the Greek mythology. On his throne of Mount Olympus, he reigns over the universe. He's the son of the Titans Cronus and Rhea, his father, who was a god who reigned before the birth of Zeus. And I said, wait a minute, now who's Cronus? So who was Cronus? Now I did a little bit last time I did Zeus and all the brothers and sisters that he had and went into the battle of the Titans. Well, I got a little bit on who Cronus was, and everybody was wondering why did Cronus swallow the babies? Well, so who was Cronus? Well, most famous Titan, Cronus, as far as Titans go. And I think Atlas edges him out of the Titan sculpted on the world on his shoulders. Now, Crichton was a Titan god of agriculture, vegetation, and harvest. Now, there was a misconception. A lot of people thought this Coronis, the Titan king. No, he wasn't. Don't be confused with it. So now, Cronus, he was a deity and um, he was a perfectionist of time. And the only association with Cronus, the Titan king, has time to time destructive, all devouring aspect. So Cronus was the youngest of the original 12 Titans, all of whom were the children of Gaia and Uranus, I'm sorry. Though he was the youngest, Cronus was the only one willing to be Gaia's champion of premortal deities. And not only that, but he was the ruler of the sky. Now, Uranus is both the son to Gaia and of Earth. And what do you mean by that? Well, I'll get into a little bit of it. In addition, Uranus and Gaia independently conceived two other children, Pontus, the sea, and Orua, the mountains. And though they did have three. So, what are the other sources that Uranus has? Um, because he had a union between him and Athea. So, and this was up in the upper skies, okay, which meaning what they called the heavens. Well, according to the heavens, um, everybody would think that would be way up there. Well, no, this was only the skies. See, the Greek gods could never go above space. They weren't never allowed to. And so I'm going to kind of show you guys how it goes back, and it'll prove why the Greek gods could never go above space. All right. So Uranus being independently conceived with Gaia without copulation and is a central figure within the Greek theology, which is essentially the genealogy of the gods. He sired many children with Gaia, and most gods and titans are ascended from him. And among the children of the first generation of the titans, the Cyclopses, Brontus, Steropes, and Argus. And the, oh boy, this is a good one. Uh, Hecatonocheirus, Codus, Bararius, and Gyges, who, okay, if to make it really simple with you, they were all the giants of old. Now, you're saying, okay, wait a minute, that's biblical. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Uh, so I'm gonna stick, folks. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna stick to Greek mythology and Egypt history tonight to prove to you of who all these gods were, and then you'll understand how Zeus had the power he did to pass it on to the next generations. And so now these giants had immense strength. They sometimes they had more than one arm, up to maybe even 100 arms. And not only that, but they could have even had 50 heads. Unfortunately, the union between Uranus and Gaia wasn't the happiest affair. But there doesn't come much of a surprise. I mean, what Greek mythology is, if it's not a grand it's not really a grand story, folks. It's betrayal, it's incest, it's murder. They come, um, so when we look at this, they come from Horus, the first god of gods. And it's the first, from what I've been able to trace it back to, is the first Egyptian dynasty. And of Horus comes Osiris and Isis. Now, Osiris and Isis. Now, is this starting to sound a little bit familiar to you? And who does Osiris and Isis come from? Set. Now, here's the line. Now, Set was the son of the gods mixing with women of earth, of not of gods, but the angels. They were put in by God to watch the skies and the space and the earth. Okay, now, like I said, all information tonight I bring to you is Greek mythology and history, Egyptian history. And so Set, okay, now this is going into, well, Set is going into what we call Egyptian mythology, Egyptian history. That is known and it's written down all through Egypt. Now, Set was also maybe even known as Ra, the Egyptian god. Now, he had the power of the space, the skies, and the earth. So, if you don't understand it, he was documented by Egyptians, but by the book of Enoch. So, it would explain how the first Greek gods were giants. Okay, so don't let me lose you guys on this. So, if you look into Ra, okay, Ra was one of the first, and he had the head of a bird. So that way you can understand this a little bit more. So, so the god of the sky and the protector, there was Horus. Horus the first. Now they seem to, so you guys don't get confused. Now there is Set, that Set had children, and one of the children was Seth. And then there was also Horus, and then there was Horus the second. So, and this is where a lot of people get really messed up in Greek mythology because they don't get they say, well, Horus was over here with the Egyptians, and no, he was over here with the Greeks. The timeline don't fit. So that way you guys understand. Now, I want to go back to Ra and Set. Now, Ra and Set, oh boy, how do I, without getting you guys too far into it, were considered watchers. And if you know anything about the book of Enoch and Jasher, I think, you will know who the watchers are. So now, Horus and Ra, the first, the god of the sky and the protector of the kingship, he is most popular among the avian deities and known in Egyptian religion, who could also be represented by birds, the hawk family, sometimes even eagle. And that's why the hawks and the eagles are used from generation all the way to Zeus. and they are connected to the kingship. And later on, some of the cults of these gods were gradually assimilated with that of Horus. The name itself became the general term for the great number of falcon deities that worshiped throughout Egypt from the pre-dynasty times. Horus is one of the oldest gods recognizable in the imagery dating to the late pre-dynasty period. And he is typically depicted wholly as a falcon wearing a number of crowns, and which were solar in nature, and represented him as a falcon head man wearing the double crown in the upper lower uh, Egypt. Now, upper and lower Egypt. So he was considered. They didn't have pharaohs. He was more like a god. And now, if real quick, if you look at him being a deity, a god with powers, then as it trickled down through the ages and the generations of pharaohs, what I found out a long time ago, and I didn't really understand it till probably this week, um, is the Pharaoh with Moses. Now he had powers, but they were simple powers, simple um, powers that a magician would do, until it came down to a lot of the plagues that happened in Egypt. And then he started conjuring up uh, his ancestors. But I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to get that far into it. I want to stick to who was these generations of Zeus. And so that um, with the upper and lower Egypt. Now, if you notice, lower Egypt is in the northern part, and then the upper is south. It's because the river flows that way. So the original cities of Egypt were in right there with the Egyptian lower Egypt. So now, this falcon god Horus, was a solar deity. Now, he believed the moon and the sun and the ancient Egyptians were in belief that these crossed the sky at the same time. Horus flew across in guise of a falcon, and the right eye that was defined as the morning sun symbolized the power and the light of the king, and the ruler of often thought to be a living manifestation. Now, his left eye represented the moon, which symbolized divine power of healing. So, by having dominion over two important celestial bodies. And this is probably one of the many reasons that made people perceived him as a god of the sky. And but more of the god of the sun. And Horus comes from basically the term Huru, meaning one who is distant or on high, and it referenced the role to the Egyptian pantheon, and later Latinized to become now what we know the start of the earlier deities, which regarded as separate beings belonging to different time and span, but nonetheless portrayed the aspects at the same time. So why are these guys important? Because they were the first. They were giants. Um, now they want, some people say 50 feet, 100 feet, 200, and some say 4,000 feet. Um, and then when they would argue, they would rip the mountains out and throw them at one another. Or I don't know if all that I believe that. Um, but it makes for a good story. But so we need to understand Zeus, and with Isis, with the transfer of power from Ra, because um, how did, if Ra was the most powerful, how did his children get the power? Well, it was with Isis, and she got the transfer of power from Ra, and she gained it of the father, basically her father. and she became the goddess of the space, the skies, and the earth. So it was only natural for her brother Osiris to partner with her to share power. So that's basically what she did. Was she tricked him, and she got as he got old, there was a name that he was supposed to uh, that he kept, that would say the name of who he was, and also the connections. From what I've been able to find out through Egyptian history, it connected um, the two. It connected the Greek gods with the Egyptian gods, and so that's why she wanted the power. And they could go on to be these gods and the main gods. They didn't want it just over in Egypt. This would give her the ultimate power of over the universe, basically. So then there wouldn't be over here in Egypt, and then wherever they were in the skies, and the ruler of the rest of the earth. So what she did is she got him, as he was dying, he was drooling, and she got his slobber. Boy, this is crazy. And then she made and created a cobra, and she got the venom from the cobra and she gave it to him. And so this is kind of how he died, and eventually gave her the ultimate power. So that's where Osiris and Isis comes from. Now, Osiris and Isis are brother and sister. They didn't believe in mingling uh, like before, what they had seen before, because it became a giant mess of bad earthlings, I guess you would say. So our story is a fascinating example of one on very occasions as sibling rivalry turned ugly and somewhat even, oh boy, it's just downright mean to one another. I mean, if you have brothers and sisters you don't get along with, these guys were worse. They are laced with jealousy and betrayal, and they want to kill each other. And so we're talking about Osiris in this transition. Um, and his transition then became the Lord of Death. And our story begins oddly right there. The Egyptian mythology and the creation of the world is credited to the union of the earth and the sky. Uh, and they say the heavens. But when it came down to it, they could no longer even say the heavens. They could only really say at this point, when it came to Osiris and Isis, that it was the earth and the sky, because there was uh, um, basically Osiris of the sky, and uh, Isis being of the earth. And so it's said that this union produced 5 children. Okay, and these were the children of Set. It was Osiris, Isis, Seth, uh, Nephthys, and Horus. So now we see the first part of where Horus comes from. And so these, um, Osiris was then became the Lord of the earth. Finding Egypt uncivilized and lawless, Osiris thought it was disgusting. And so he wanted to make changes. So this is where we see Osiris becoming, uh, he created the laws, the cultures, the religion, the farming. He was an expert on this, and wanted to flourish. And since Egypt was so plush back then, it could be the gardens of Eden in his in his book, and to rule over it. Now his sister Isis worked closely with him, giving the world the gifts of compassion. Um, and there's many levels of every single one of these guys. Um, Seth struggled to cope with success of his brother, and jealousy and envy in his heart began to grow. And why? Because he grabbed up on Isis. Seth, he felt, being the namesake, the junior, should have gotten the power, but Isis beat him to it. So this is a family feud. was already breaking to the point when the wife of Seth, the sister of Osiris, Nithis, made her move, tipping basically the the scale of peace over the edge. And so um, unknown to Seth, um, his own wife was lusting after Osiris. Uh, she was just drawn in by his power and how basically his beauty or his handsomeness. And so basically, um, she disguised herself as Isis, seduced him, ended up getting pregnant with the god of Anubis, and upon hearing the word of his wife's betrayal, made the worst given the identity of her lover. Seth was so enraged, he hatched a plan. And this is kind of getting to where you see the generations of the eatings of the babies. And I hope I could say that without getting in trouble. Um, so, so he hatched this great plan. He adorned with gems and finished in dazzling gold. He tailored uh, the measurements of Osiris and his brother, the great rival. And he trapped him. He threw him a grand party of gods. And during his brother was invited. After the banquet with all the guests and everything, he one by one, he took them outside, and there was his box. And one by one, guests got into the box and hoping they would fit, and they couldn't do it. And finally, he turned to Osiris and, suspecting foul play from his brother, he said, "Nah, I could fit in there." And of course, he went in there. Seth leaped forward, he slammed it, and basically, he locked him up inside. And he whisked his prize, what he thought, into his arms, and he headed to the Great Nile and threw the basket or the box into the river, and it was swept away. Um, Now Osiris, still trapped inside, eventually passed away, and it sunk to the bottom of the Nile. And at this point, um, the king of Byblos passed by a tree, declaring it magnificent and demanding it was cut down, brought to his palace. And so it was Osiris that found himself permanently struck inside this coffin. And so this gentleman that brought this tree in uh, wanted to bring it in to um, basically say how great Osiris was. Now, during this time, Isis had fled Egypt herself in search of her lost husband, and really to no avail. She went everywhere, and she just could not find it. And eventually, she happened across by Boaz, and disguised as an older woman, she sat down on the shore and cried for her lost love, and spotted this his royal handmaids. And so they invited her into the palace, and soon she told him who she was. And sensing in him a magnificent ornamental pillar, her heart soared. She wasted no time revealing herself and um, promised basically the king and queen. Um, she promised them anything that they would possibly want, um, to give her the tree. And see, what was part of this tree was that coffin. And she of course ripped it open and looked, and it was her lifeless husband. And joy came over her, and so she, returning to Egypt with his body, um, uh, brought it back. And because um, Seth was just beside himself over this. He was, what he did was basically he took it and took off. Well, the next time it was found, and I think I said this in the last one, Uh, what he did was he tore his body in pieces and took it all over the place. So it was, of course, Isis had to go find her long lost husband. And what she did was she went and she found all the pieces and put it back together again. And lo and behold, was able to get pregnant. Now, I don't know. This is the way of the gods. And not only that, it was the afterlife that they seem to latch onto. And this is where they say reincarnation comes from, is that he did come alive. Not really. I mean, enough he enough to come back, and then basically she was pregnant. So she was best basically trying to hide this from Seth, and of course, uh, as he this child that she hid ended up growing into a very strong, a powerful god. And this is where Horus came in. So here was Horus, um, and okay, so this would be Horus Jr., okay? Because now so this is where everybody gets really messed up, is where there was Horus that was a brother, and now there is Horus as the child, okay? So Horus basically comes back, and they basically um, he went and he saved his mother, Isis, who fought so hard for the man she loved and never gave up. And still, um, what it was is the death of Seth. And so this is where it went on. So then we had Horus, okay? And I mentioned Horus the elder was the brother of Isis and Seth and all of them. Well, the son of Osiris and Isis, Horus the child, and they call him a Wolfhawk, aired in ancient Egypt. Horus the younger was a formidable sky god who was associated primarily with the sun and the moon, which, when they said this in Egypt, if it was ever the sun and the moon, then you know it was part of that realm of gods. So he was the protector of the Egyptian kingdom and the defender of the order of what was going on in Egypt. So he was more, um, I want to say he was more Egyptian than he was um, of the Greek gods, because I believe, because of the Father coming back to life and wanting to, um, and all of the things that his Father promised to the people of Egypt. Okay, so he was associated with and did more with looking at the grandfather, Ra, the sun god. And so it was he started wearing the hawk head or the eagle, and that's where you start seeing where it went from you seeing Ra of Egypt as a god that had the head or the face of the hawk or the eagle, and then Horus, the great or the grandson, it was doing the same thing. And so then you see where it went from uh, the Egyptians and their gods, it went to the Greek gods to start the head of the bird. So hopefully I got that. I've explained that to you, because then, before that, um, or after that, then we're looking at Uranus and Gaia. And I told you a little bit about them and everything that they had to do with um, being uh, the two of them, and how they went on to start of the giants. And so as they ended up, um, they call Tartarus, and he basically was one of the fiercest. Now, when this came up, we are looking at one of the meanest gods, they said, that the Greek gods ever conjured up. And so I just want to get that because a lot of people confuse this with the Kraken. And it's two separate ones because the Tartarus is actually one that took out um, some of the meanest and the biggest gods of the world of Set, because there was quite a few of them. And in order to get rid of them, they needed to conjure up this Tartarus. And I'm not going to get too far into it because, boy, that's another story. But they ended up having many children. And because of what was going on, um, and because they were of Uranus was had heard that one of his offsprings would be the death of him. So um, instead of uh, waiting for to find out which one it was, he basically trapped the children inside of of Gaia, and basically. Um, oh boy, I'm trying to think of a way to put this. Um, in a way of motion, okay, with her and her children. Um, she asked them to not only castrate him, but it was they had to castrate him to the point where he um, um, he castrated his father, so there couldn't be no more children for him to bear. And why was that? Because they had these gods had a problem with either eating the children so they wouldn't kill them, or keep the wives from having kids or going out and having lovers. And so there was a lot of this going on back then. And so basically, um, Kronos lay in wait and he ambushed his father, and he descended to plant his seed in Gaia. So here we go with incest again. And so the droplets um, of blood that spilled forth from when he was castrated, they basically threw it into the sea. And I don't know why they, it doesn't say what they thought would happen, except for the fact that it was put into the sea. Now we're thinking that this is a form of where with Poseidon and giving Poseidon some power, but I'm not real sure. So, um, and not only that, but they say that some of the stuff that came from the ocean, and because this was incest and lust and power, and that this was the way Aphrodite was born. Now, I don't know. I'm not real I'm not real sure on that one. I couldn't find enough proof on it. But they did say that Aphrodite was the daughter of Zeus. And after Cronus basically took care of his father, he goes into reincarnated both. Um, he went, well, what he did is he reincarnated all of the dead giants, the Cyclopses, the Tartarus, and basically promised that he would take care of them. And so the next generation, okay, then we're looking at Cronus. And let's see. Now, Cronus, um, he was the Titan god of agriculture. And just, it was almost like his father. And, uh, and you see through time with this misconception that the Titan King could not be confused with Cronus, okay? So just to make sure you guys don't get that confused, because um, there was a what I like about this story is the time it's almost like a time traveling thing, and it is a way that I believe the portals happen. Uh, no one really knows the origins of the portals, and we see them. We see them with Egyptian writing. We've seen them with the American Indians. We've seen it all over the world. Those spirals, and this is something that has never been explained, and it goes all the way back to this time. And so, what we're thinking is um, that Kronos was the start of, and he said something that he had something to do with time, but there's nothing written there of what he had to do with time. And so we're thinking, or the Egyptian um, biblical scholars and the ones that look into the biblical part of it, they basically were saying that they were seeing the spirals, and they were seeing the spirals in the Egyptian beginnings. And so they're thinking that this came from him, and it started the portals to where it was easier for evil to come and go. And they would have, think serious, think seasons. Yeah, yep, that's right. William, if you know some of this, chime in, because boy, this is a good one. Um, so, so Cronus' motives coming to Gaia as aid were not strictly um, just to help her out. Cronus was jealous of the power of his father, the ruler of the universe, they say. So now this is where I believe that when these gods, when they killed Set or Ra, they thought he had the power of the universe. And at this time, that's when they decided, okay, if they are the gods of the universe, the four seasons, yes, think of the seasons. They thought they could be the controlling factor of the earth. Now we all know, if you're a Christian, you know that this is God's earth. This isn't Kronos's earth. This isn't Set's earth. Set was a fallen that came here, and so I really don't want to get biblical on you guys. Um, Basically, when they had found out that this is when Cronus was doing that, I think they were trying to use the portals to get to the heaven. They say heavens. Heavens is the space, the skies, and then all the way, basically where it comes down to earth. Now, when they say heavens, is because this is when they found out they were able to go into space and they could see the planets. Now, these are gods, folks. This isn't human stuff. These are the gods that are playing. These are ones that have powers. And were there men on earth at this time? Yes, because we heard that they did feel sorry for the Egyptians or others that were around. And they thought of them as, I think, like play toys. They could do whatever they want with the humans. And the humans would obey, and the humans would do what they said, because these were gods. And some of them, like I said, were giants. And can you imagine them sicking Cyclops on you? You don't mind? How about we send you to the cave of Medusa? How about the Kraken get you? These are gods that could create a monster, or they could create something that could make you very miserable. They were the in control of what I say, agriculture. They were so. This is where I think it changed, because then they found out that when they thought they had the universe, they only had the sky. They couldn't go to heaven. And so this, I think, was a bad understanding that came from Ra or Set. And they said, we're the God, we're the one true God. No, 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 they weren't. And I think they lied to their to not only their family members, but to their own kids. And so the kids believed this. That's why ISIS went to get that power. And then she thought she was the goddess of the universe, because that's what she said, of the earth and the heavens. And it was always mentioned as heavens. Yeah, the humans were the pets, were their pets and flocks. Yeah, to do what they wanted to. So, so this is where I think the portals came from, and so does a lot of the Egyptian scholars. So, and this is now you're looking at Cronus, and we're not very far from Zeus being born now. Um, and this is, so you're seeing that Cronus, um, he basically, they still had the power, and they were still giants. And so, you know, basically, when we, um, the one thing about Cronus, he was like they said he was almost like the god of hell. He was a tyrant. He was the, you know, he wasn't good to humans at this time. He uh, he um he was they say that he was really a good time for humans. The people of the age knew not of hardship, suffering, or toil, rules, and laws, and conceived basically, he thought immorality didn't exist, and everyone did the right thing back then. And this was primeval for him, of joy and pleasure and abundance of food. And they were working, and the land provided to some, not of all, though. What I'm talking about is we're moving over to um, the land of Rome at this time. So we're looking that they're over there and they're eating grapes, and there's plenty of these rich guys. Then there's the poor guys, and you got these gods. And for a time span, a person's life seemed to be a little longer. And so, alas, the golden age was not to last very long. Um, and Gaia and Uranus divided that Cronus would be dethroned. Um, and when Cronus learned of this, he devised a plan to prevent his children from ever being able to challenge him. And he made his wife present him with each of their children. And as soon as they were born, he swallowed them whole. He swallowed Demeter, Hestia, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and having her children devoured in front of her became more unbearable. And so each time she lost her children, eventually she seeks out Gaia, who implores her to help save her youngest child, Zeus. And she is sympathetic. And now Zeus was known, I don't know if so many knew it, but she fled with him to an island, and it was the island of the Cyclops. And I believe that's who protected him. But he didn't know that he had had a child. And so eventually, what she did was, in order to get rid of instead of presenting Zeus to Cronus, she deceived him with a stone in baby clothes. And without even thinking about it, he swallowed it down. And so Zeus is reared as in a secret. And of course, um, he regurgitates the rest of the children out. Now, it's said that they came out as whole, is the same age as oh my goodness, uh, of full age. But then now, when I looked into the Egyptian history, the Egyptians said no, they all came out as babies. So that's for you. I mean, if you, whatever you want to believe. So basically, so now Cronus is basically the father of Zeus, and then Zeus is made to be the king eventually. And of course, castrating Cronus and repeating that Cronus did to his own father. So a we have a history of them either eating their wives, so they can't have, so they can't, or I should say, their lovers. They have a habit of eating their lovers, and to keep them from having a child that could be the one that gets rid of them, to eating their children. They were known to do this a lot. And then, of course, uh, these other gods that did this, there's many of them, folks. There is a god, a Gabe, that is in there with the rest of them. That is a whole other history. And in the book of Enoch and the book of Jasher, you see that there were others, but they really wanted to center on Zeus and these deities, because those are the ones that the Romans adapted and the Greeks adapted as their Greek and Roman gods. So now Zeus, growing up with, on Mount Olympus. Now, one of the Egyptian scholars mentioned something. Oh, they ate humans too. Yeah. So now get this. These gods, they had to be so big. Now you got to think on how big a human being is. Uh, let's say 6 foot. Let's say a good 6 foot human being, or 6 foot, or let's say a 5 foot woman. They were picking them up and swallowing them whole. So think of the size of these giants, and you say, "Oh, good grief!" Were those the original Nephilim? I believe it was before. Uh, and then, because when we see the actual gods mix with women, then we see giants that were only 9 to 20 feet tall. Some of them were 25, but I think it was the generation before where we seen these huge, huge giants, and I think this is how they came down, uh, to keep control of the planet. Um, so you could now you could see a 15-foot guy swallowing a human being. It's not going to happen. That's why I believe it's a generation before. So so Zeus now, and everybody knows about the Clash of the Titans, and you've seen the movie, so I don't really got to get that far into Zeus. But what I do want to go back to is, where's their humbling beginnings, because we know these are giants. Now, this is where I don't want anybody to get upset that I'm biblical, but this is where I'm depending on the writings of the Egyptians, and stuff that they have gotten and kept for a very long time. Um, and this is over 3,500 years ago, when Ra was writing, when the first parts of writing happened. Now, what was said was, Ra came from who? Who did Ra come from? Well, he came from, I believe, this Gab. I didn't get back into any further than this, other than find out that there was at the beginning of time, when the fallen, um, God put them in charge of the earth and the skies. Okay, and they were to watch the humans. So we know humans were already there. And what they did is they saw the women, and they were very, very beautiful. Start to sound familiar? Well, then guess what? Then they mingled with the women. And then what do we get? We get the starting of the gods, and the starting of the Nephilim. So it really coincides. So the Bible with Enoch and Jasher pretty much proves what was said in Egyptian history, which is also said in the Greek gods. It just has the point of what we should be looking at. Now, I don't want to burst everybody's bubble on this, but these are coming from is what they call the Lord of Hades. And boy, I don't want to get, like I said, I don't want to go too biblical, so I'm going to go with what I know with the Egyptian. When basically the Lord of Hades, and then we go up into the Egyptians, we go into Ra. Okay, where did it separate between, like I said, when they went from the Egyptian and then the Greeks went here? Okay, so there was the lighter skins and they were the darker skins, right? Now, when you look at Egypt and you start with Egypt, where did they go? It was basically, this is where it had traveled to the Middle East, and this is where you see the upcoming of Muhammad. Um, and they have the same beliefs as the Egyptians believe, and they have the same thing in the Quran saying what the Egyptians have written about these gods and who they are and who they think of as God is the same as the Egyptians, is the same as the Greek gods. So you see, so all of them really have all these connections. So you say, okay, what about India? What about the Shiva with the arms? Okay, Tartus. Tartus had many, many arms. And so that's where we're looking at that. And their Shiva was born of a god. And what they say, one of the gods that was the original gods of Ra. So you see, it all connects. Now, I didn't get to China and Buddha, but Buddha believes in Shiva. So this is all explaining. And it all says, as it goes down in the writings of Egypt, it says like Ra begot, and then who they were, and then who was the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. Well, no wonder we have our Bible in Genesis saying the begottens and the line of the lineage, because you can't get none of these names from these gods, these Greek gods, these deities. You'll never find them in the list of Adam. And I think that's why it's so very important, because then you got the good and you got the bad, and you got the Christians, and you've got the satanics. And so that's kind of what I wanted to bring forth to you tonight, is to show you that Zeus wasn't no good guy. He wasn't, and they portray him in Hollywood as, oh, he got his power from God. No, yeah, what God? Well, how was there a God if there was generations of family members that were evil and that ate people and killed people, and they were full of lust, and that the original Ra was considered chaos, and they say he will come back in chaos, and they'll affect our. Each one of them has their own seasons. Yeah, William, you're right. Of the seasons of each thing that could possibly happen. Not only that, but we are looking at even oh boy, I don't want to get into the Four Horsemen. Even has stuff to do with this, where at the end times that the Egyptian writings from Ra actually was almost equivalent to the book of Revelation. And it was said that was what was going to happen at the end. Now, so when we come to Zeus, okay, what happens with the end of Zeus? Because everybody says, well, how did they all die? Or did they all die? Yes, they did. And this we turned basically where Enoch comes in. Because you say, what's Enoch got to do with all these giants? Well, when it got down to the death of Zeus, now he says that he couldn't stand all the evil and all the generations of evils and all the evil that was plaguing the world, and he just wanted to do away with it. So he just decided to flood everybody out. Well, he's what they tried to do. The Greek mythology wants to say that he's the one that caused the flood because he was God. No, that's not how it works. The problem with that is when you look at the book of Enoch, and it's before that. Um, but because of the evil of these giants and the generations that happened afterwards, that's and then Sodom and Gomorrah. Basically, that's when they flood, and that's when it got rid of all of them. And we're talking they had to get rid of the generations of the Greek gods, so that was the end um, of the generations. And sometimes, folks, I do wonder, and it's something just to ponder on. Olympus was beautiful. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful, richest cities during that time. And when the flood hit, it went underwater. And a lot of people wrote that this beautiful Olympus, that it was guess what? The Atlantis of their time was underwater, and how sad that they would never see it again. So could Olympus be the Atlantis that everybody's looking for? We just don't know. We don't know. So, um, yeah, and so the giants, did they make it through the flood? Yes, they did. They did make it through the flood. We've seen giants after the fact. They weren't no 50-foot giants. They were 9 to 15-foot giants. And not everybody died in the flood. Are they the Greeks? No, because God made sure that when he flooded the earth, it was basically to get rid of the Greek gods because of the evils they were spreading. That's where the evil was. Now, the giants after the flood were just more evil and terrorizing, evil and terrorizing. The Greek gods had powers, and that was something God, I don't think, was going to allow after the flood. So the flood protected the human race from DNA, is what we'll just put William up there, right there. So I know I ended up a minute or short of an hour. Well, I did end up an hour. But that is the story of Zeus. And, go on and enjoy the Titans. But now that you know where Zeus comes from, you understand the powers and the creatures and where Medusa comes from, Hercules, uh, and some of the others, the Kraken. These are all those gods that we did not need in moving on after the flood. And I think this was realized. This is interesting, huh, Linda? To know that the Greek gods came from the fallen angels. Um, Something to that, and it's written. It's not only written in the Bible, but it's written in Egyptian history and even Greek history. You just got to dig. I had to dig. I've been digging for this for years. I've been, when I did, when I was in college and I took um, Bible archaeology, I learned a lot of this, but it was really confusing. But it didn't make sense until I started adding in the Greek gods. And then it started really making sense of what was going on and why the flood had to happen. There was more to just Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, think about it, two little towns that, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And that's what I was the one that, and looked at my professor and said, I don't get it. Why? Why only just two towns? And then him want to flood the whole world. It wasn't, there had to be good people beyond Sodom and Gomorrah. And of course, the professor said I asked too many questions. And I'm glad I did, because I find out this stuff. And there were other mud floods also. Yeah, oh yeah. There was a lot to endure. And some even think that Machu Picchu, that Timothy Alberino and them went up to, was one of the highest peaks. And there's a good possibility that that's where the remnants of the giants went to, because they've got skulls there that are real long, and they got bodies that are 20, 25 feet tall that Timothy Alberino and Steve Quayle saw. So, yeah, they were burned. But at the same time, then there was the flood. There was the flood. Yeah, there was lots of floods. Um, and so, but he did say he would never flood the earth again. So, you know, the whole thing with Sodom and Gomorrah, and then moving on to Enoch and the flood, um, it all had to go away. Um, and because, the whole thing with um, Lot. There's so many stories out there. Asked if he had um, Lot, he lost his wife, and then him and his daughter went into the caves, and whatever happened to him. Well, that's not important. What was important, it moved on to the story of Noah, and then you see that's where I was asking the questions. Yeah, you've seen the elongated skulls, and they're saying, "Oh, Africa, they do that," and yeah, but it does not grow jawbones. How do you get the elongated heads and then the long jawbones that went with it? So if you have never seen this, folks, and you're watching, look it up on YouTube. You'll see the elongated skulls. And I suggest listening to Timothy Alberino and Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle, he kind of wants to sell his stuff, but Timothy Alberino's getting in there and he's disclosing stuff lately. Um, yeah. Um, so it was the Great Reset. No, I think it was to get rid of um, these fallen that had mixed with the women, and it just became these deities and these demigods that were horrible, and they had powers. They had they had the powers almost of the angels, and thank goodness God locked them out of the heavens, and they were only left to be the the space and the skies and the earth. Um, but then we know they're locked down for the most part. So with that, folks, share tonight. I hope you guys learned about Zeus. Now, I really say go watch if you now that you heard about all of his family, go watch um, the Titans. Go watch the Titans, and even the stuff on Olympians. But the Titans, was a very good movie, and even Perseus, he was even born of the gods. It was just further down. And of course, in the long run, they were all gone. They're all gone. So, uh, please subscribe and share, and hit the like button. Smash that like button. That like button gets us up there. It gets us out there on the mainstream of YouTube. And not only that, but it does give me more prestige on Facebook. And over on Facebook, hit the follow and the like, and share. Now, I know tonight probably, oh, you're boring tonight, Ellie. I didn't want to hear about that. But it was good for you to know to where this comes from. Don't make these Greek gods into heroes, folks. Zeus wasn't a hero, and he wasn't of God. He was of some deities and some really evil um, evil deities, and I don't even like to say they were gods. They're deities. And Muhammad, even Muhammad, and you go into the Egypt with the big stone. Did they all go up around and aroundy? Well, inside there are these three deities, and the same thing going on: lust and money and power. Um, and so that's what they're praying to, is more deities. And that's part of Muslim religion, though, and that's the Quran. And so this is, I hope, in like she said, it's interesting. uh, and I hope you learn a lot more. But don't make these Greek gods heroes. They're not heroes. They're evil. And, Clash of the Titans was a great movie, and the heroes won out at the end, but they were all Greek gods, and nobody from there was a hero. Um, so your kids might like these Greek gods, but no. And then our own Washington D.C. is portrayed after Roman and the Greek gods. I don't get it. So. All right, folks. I want to thank you all for watching tonight and your support. Tomorrow, boy, a 7.6 earthquake in Mexico. I think it was that. I'll be doing a big earthquake thing in the morning, and then got big news from Ukraine. So come on back tomorrow morning, and it's going to be a busy morning for Ellie because I got lots of news. So. Uh, So anyway, you guys have a wonderful evening, and Linda and William, you guys were great. Uh, and we will see everyone very, very soon, tomorrow morning. So come on back. God bless, and, hold your Bible close because we're getting into the days that maybe we'll see some of these giants. Not literally, but the evil. All right. Have a nice evening, folks, and we'll see you in the morning.